Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, my dad is going to be teaching us something. So Dad, what you going to be teaching us?
Okay, so today's the basics of beekeeping, part 1. We're going to be talking about the hive components of a beehive, honeybees and specifically. We're going to break it down. This right here is a typical full hive. So we're going to be talking about what's inside of this. It's not just a bunch of empty space, but there's certain things and components inside of here. So we're going to be talking about that.
Sounds good. Okay, let's get started.
Okay, so we're going to start at the very bottom. This right here is called the bottom board. This is the very base of the hive. There's actually 2 sides to a bottom board on most of them. This here, the top part, you have about 3/8 of an inch gap for the honeybee. And then in the winter time, you have a deeper gap of about 3/4 of an inch. But the majority of your bottom boards have 2 sides to them. So this is the very bottom board of the hive. Okay, and next, this here is what we call a deep. This part here is the largest of the hive. We have 3 different hive bodies. You have a deep, then we have what's called a medium, and you can see this difference in size. Then we have what's called a shallow, and it's even smaller. So there's 3 different sizes, and the majority of people don't use shallows anymore. They use mostly deeps and mediums. So I'm just going to set these off here. So your deep hive box is empty. It's got a ledge right here on each side, and that's where your frames fit down in. Now a frame is what the bees land on, and that's where they work their comb in. They make their honeycomb, and then they place the honey inside of those. So I've got this deep up here. It's the same thing. These 2 are the same. But inside here, I've got frames. Now these frames, I'll pull one out. This is what a frame looks like. And this black part right here is what we call the foundation. The foundation can be plastic, which that's what this is plastic. And it's got a coating of honeybee wax on it, beeswax. And the bees like the beeswax on it, and they do what we call drawing out the comb. Now here's another one. I don't know if you can see this very well, but you can see that there's some comb right here, this raised part, and that's honeycomb. The bees started to draw comb out on that. If you compare the 2, you might be able to see that, but this is comb that the bees are working on. And I've got another one in here that's even better, and the bees started drawing this out. And in this comb, these holes right here are called cells, and that's where the bees place their honey and their pollen, and they also have their babies. The queen bee, she lays eggs inside those holes, those cells, and that's where the baby bees are born at. So there's different kinds of foundation. Like I said, this black part is the foundation. Now some people use plastic, some people have, it's beeswax. It's a beeswax foundation made out of beeswax. And then some people don't use any foundation at all, they just leave it empty. Such as this one right here. This frame here goes into a medium box, but it doesn't have any foundation, it's just open. So what the bees will do is the bees will attach honeycomb up here, and they will start to work it down toward the bottom. Now give me just a second and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this here I used with no foundation, and the bees naturally draw out the wax on their own. Now the difference is the bees like this better, but it makes it real flimsy, especially when it's first made. So sometimes if you're taking a frame out and you're looking down at it, the whole thing can fall off and it'll be covered in bees, and those bees will die. So having a foundation in there makes it sturdier. So that's kind of the difference. And this here is a deep frame, this here is a medium frame. You can tell the difference. So your deep frames, most people use these for foundation for the brood. The baby bees, it's where the queen raises her young. And on a typical hive, you have 2 deeps. So you'd have each one of these boxes here can hold 10 frames. You have a 10 frame, and then you have an 8 frame. I use 10 frame boxes instead of the 8 frame. So this box here holds 10 of these frames. Now just for the video I did, and so it would be easier, I included smaller frames in here. Just so I could show you guys. And this here has just got the honeycomb already made up inside of it. But typically you'd want 10 deeps in a deep box, and 10 mediums in a medium box, and 10 shallow frames in a shallow box. Even though I've got these mixed up a little bit just for the video's sake. So again, this is what it would look like looking at it from the top view, is it would have 10 frames in here. And this here, this bottom box is a deep, and it's called the foundation, or the brood chamber. So I'll go ahead and add this one. This would have 10 frames in it as well, even though it don't right now, but if I was using this for a hive. So these 2 here would make up the brood chamber, which is where the queen raises all of her baby bees at, and all the eggs and larvae and everything of the honeybees is in the brood chamber. So sometimes in the brood chamber there's also honey, and there's also pollen, and the bees use all that for the feed for her baby bees. Well, honeybees make excess honey because they know that the winter's coming and that they're going to need some storage of honey. So they will also they'll work up to a certain level, and they'll cap off their eggs, and they'll make like a rainbow over on the frame and have honey. And from that rainbow of honey on up, anything above that is usually all honey. And we call those supers. In the beekeeping world, this is your brood chamber, and anything above the brood chamber is called supers. So we want the queen to stay down in here in the brood chamber. We don't want the queen coming up any higher to the box. So what we use is a queen excluder. This right here is a queen excluder. The queen is bigger, she's larger than the rest of the honeybees, so she can't squeeze through these holes. So we place this queen excluder on top like that, so the queen cannot go up here any higher and lay eggs. She has to stay down here in the brood chamber. So then we would have our medium box. This is a medium, and it goes up here, and typically it would have 10 frames, and that goes in there. So the bees, the worker bees, they come up here and they make all the honey. So everything above the brood chamber, above these 2 white boxes, anything above that is for honey. And like I said, most people, a typical hive usually has 2 deeps and sometimes 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 mediums, and some people use shallows. And this here's a shallow, and it's got the frames in it, and it would go up here. And so this has eggs and larvae for the baby bees and the queen. Up here is your honey. Then to close off the hive, this here is called an inner cover. This inner cover is just something to place over top. It's got a hole in the middle here. The inner cover, if I was just to take and raise off the lid, and then there's all the bees, they would just fly everywhere. But with this other inner cover, whenever I take the lid off, this inner cover here just lets a little bit of light in there, and it lets the bees know that something's getting ready to happen, so they don't take off flying all over the place and scare them. And plus, it's easier to get the lid off with this on. So your inner cover goes up here. Then your lid goes up here. This is called a telescoping lid, and it goes over that, and that right there is a complete beehive. So just to review, you got your bottom board, you have your 2 deeps, and they have frames, and inside the frames sometimes they have foundation, sometimes they don't. Then you have your queen excluder, then you have a medium super and a shallow super, and they have frames and they have foundation. Then you have your inner cover up underneath there, then you have your telescoping cover, and that pretty much makes up one whole beehive. And there can be as many as close to around 100,000 bees inside of a beehive. It just depends on how large your hive is. Sometimes when you start off, beekeepers starting off, you can buy bees through the mail. That's called a package of bees. And it runs anywhere between $120 to $130 for a package of bees. And there is roughly, probably, I think it's like 3 pounds of bees, and that equals to be roughly around 12,000 bees. And so you would start off with a package. Another way with a package though, they don't have any foundation, they don't have any comb, they don't have any baby bees. They're starting from scratch, and sometimes they may take and sometimes it may not take, and the bees may leave. You just never know. So you can get a better way, which is called a nook. Also, a nook is abbreviations for a nucleus colony. A nucleus is a condensed smaller hive, and it's right here. This right here is a nucleus colony. It's a lot smaller than a regular hive, but inside of this, here's your lid. Inside of here, you just have 5 frames instead of 10. It's a nucleus colony. So what you do is, some people sell nucleus colonies. That way they've already got frames, so they've already got baby bees, there's already some honey, there's already some pollen. So if you buy a nucleus colony, that means that the hive, the bees have already made this their home, so they're going to stay there, they're not going to leave you. And these are more expensive. They run anywhere between $140 up to $250. Depends on where you get them at. So a nucleus colony can be, they're more expensive, but it's more of a guarantee that they're going to stay there versus buying a package of bees through the mail. And you can also buy a queen through the mail just by herself, or sometimes they put 5 or 6 worker bees with her. And those run anywhere between $30 to $40 and on up, just for a queen bee. But one last thing, is this right here is called an entrance reducer. It goes across like this. And you have two sides. You have this bigger hole here, and then you have a smaller hole. In the winter time, you want this over, and this little hole will prevent a lot of the draft when it's cold, and also the bees can guard it from other bees trying to come in and steal their honey. But it reduces the entrance down to where the bees can fight off any other bees, and they can also adjust the temperature inside by making it warmer that way. You don't have to have one of these, but they do come in handy. Okay, and so that's pretty much everything about the basics of your beehive, all the components. So that kind of concludes part one of basic beekeeping. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Michael?
Yeah, hope you all learned something. I know I did. And yeah, it's kind of amazing on how much there is, like just from one simple beehive, all the different parts of it. So hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And also feel free to check out my parents' Facebook page at Hawkins Joyful Bees. I'll leave a link to the Facebook page inside the description of this video. And that's pretty much all I can think of to say. So until next time, we'll see y'all later.
See you later.
That's all, folks.